Hello, my name is Hillary Ake, and today I'm going to be doing a book talking presentation for you. I'm going to be presenting 6 different books to give you an idea of the types of books we have available at the local public library. So let's get started. The first book I'm going to be presenting today is The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan. This is a beautifully written story from the perspective of 8 different women, 4 mothers and 4 daughters. The set of mothers are all immigrants from China now living in the United States, and they form a club called the Joy Luck Club where they meet to play mahjong, which is a tile game of strategy. The mothers connect like sisters, and they share their tragedies and their dreams and their hopes, and of course they share the troublesome relationships they have with their daughters growing up in an American world. This is told in first person, and it moves from character to character, and secrets are uncovered, truths are explored, and mysteries resolved. The story is loosely centered around one daughter whose mother has passed away, and her mother's greatest regret was leaving twin girls in China, and her daughter June is to travel to China in her mother's stead. June is unsure of how she might represent her mother, feeling that there's so much about her mom that she never knew. This story speaks highly of Chinese culture, and it's deeply rooted in historical context. It also presents the struggles of immigrant parents and their American-born children. It is easy to relate to this story no matter your cultural heritage. Everyone, particularly teens, can admit that sometimes we feel we know very little about our parents, and we can be surprised at the truths of their lives. This is a wonderful book that allows readers to learn about Chinese culture and reflect on the complexities of mother-daughter relationships. So the next book I wanted to talk to you about is The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. It was 7 minutes after midnight. The dog was lying on the grass in the middle of the lawn. Its eyes were closed. The dog was dead. There was a garden fork sticking out of the dog. The points of the fork must have gone all the way through the dog and into the ground because the fork had not fallen over. I decided that the dog was probably killed with the fork because I could not see any other wounds, and I do not think you would stick a garden fork into a dog after it had died for some other reason, like cancer or a road accident. But I could not be certain about this. I went through Mrs. Shear's gate, closing it behind me. I walked onto her lawn and knelt beside the dog. I put my hand on the muzzle. It was still warm. The dog was called Wellington. It belonged to Mrs. Shears, who was our friend. She lived on the opposite side of the road, 2 houses to the left. Wellington was a poodle. I stroked Wellington, and I wondered why someone had killed him. I pulled the fork out of the dog and lifted him into my arms and hugged him. He was leaking blood from the fork holes. I like dogs. You can always tell what they're thinking. Also, dogs are faithful, and they do not tell lies because they cannot talk. I'd been hugging the dog for 4 minutes when I heard screaming. I looked up and saw Mrs. Shears running toward me from the patio. She was wearing pajamas and a housecoat. She was shouting, "What have you done to my dog?" I do not like people yelling at me. It makes me scared that they're going to hit me or touch me, and I don't know what's going to happen. I put down the dog, and I moved back 2 meters. She bent down. I thought she was going to pick up the dog herself, but she didn't. Instead, she started screaming again. I put my hands over my ears and closed my eyes. I pressed my forehead to the grass. It was wet and cold. It was nice. So the next book I'd like to talk to you about is called Who Will Run the Frog Hospital by Lori Moore. This is a story about 2 young girls and their friendship. Their names are Bree and Sills, and the story is told from Bree's perspective, and she recounts their childhood together and how their friendship changed as they reached teen years because boys started to become a part of their lives. So this is one of my favorite excerpts, and I think it describes their friendship very beautifully. Often, when I went over to Sill's house, She would have the side door unlocked and a salad or a cottage cheese sandwich waiting for me in the kitchen counter. I would take it, eat it, then go upstairs to her room and sit next to her, strum the guitar with her, and sing folk songs, feeling myself a goner in the minor 7 chords, their sad irresolution stirring something lost and heartbroken. Though, how could that be? I was only 15. Still, something deeply sad had been born buried in me, stirring occasionally inside like a creature moving in sleep. When we were younger, Sills and I had always looked for caves together, or some small, undiscovered duck pond. We'd go to the Grand Union and cheer on the lobsters that had managed to break free of their rubber bands. We'd build a half tent out of 3 open umbrellas, and we'd go underneath it and play cards. We'd walk miles to the county dump just to see the bears. Or, by the time we were 12, we'd bike to the head shop to buy wisteria incense. We'd go down to the Orpheum, say we were 16, and see R-rated movies, or occasionally a foreign one, which would mesmerize and perplex us. At 13, we would hang out at W.T. Grant's, buying bras and ice cream sundaes and trying on men's sweaters. At 14, we would claim to be sleeping at each other's house, and then we'd stay out all night and from old mayonnaise jars drink liquor collected from our parents' own supplies. Then we'd sleep in the family station wagon in the driveway, wake early, and get donuts. But increasingly, now that I was alone with my outings, wondering what it was like for Sills and her boyfriend Mike, what they did together, what were all the things I didn't know yet to ask, and now that she had gone to that new advanced place, I hadn't, whether she liked me less. So the next book I'd like to talk to you about is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. It all started the day the bulldozer came to knock down Arthur Dent's house to make way for the highway bypass. Since Arthur Dent seriously objected to the bulldozer, he was lying in the mud, in his bathrobe, in front of the bulldozer to prevent its passage, when his friend Ford Perfect came along to take Arthur to the pub for a drink. Though it was still morning, Ford was planning to tell Arthur some news that could cause him to need a stiff drink. The news was that the world was going to end in 12 minutes. What Arthur did not know about Ford was that Ford was an alien from a small planet near Betelgeuse who had been stranded on Earth for 15 years, waiting for a flying saucer to hitch him a ride home. In fact, Ford was a researcher for a wholly remarkable book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Ford was very bored with his lengthy stay on the dull planet and would not mourn its passing. 12 minutes later, when a fleet of Vogon starships vaporized Earth to make way for a hyperspatial bypass, it was thanks to Ford's hitchhiking skills that Arthur and Ford found themselves not evaporated, but safely aboard a Vogon starship, Arthur still in his bathrobe. There, Ford introduced Arthur to the marvels of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, an electronic book that told you everything you wanted to know about the universe, but were afraid to ask, and other tips for galactical hitchhikers. Inside the cover, the guide explained such great universal truths as to why a towel is the most useful item a hitchhiker can carry, how to stick a babblefish in your ear instantly to translate any language, and why one should never, under any circumstances, listen to Vogon poetry. To join Ford and Arthur, who is still in his bathrobe, on their adventures hitchhiking through the galaxy, I invite you to read this book. The next book I want to show you is Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close by Jonathan Safran Foer. I actually don't have the jacket for this book, but I'll show you the inside cover. Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. This is a novel by Jonathan Safran Foer, and it's a story of a 9-year-old boy named Oscar Schell, who loses his father in the 9/11 attacks. He's intelligent and witty and very emotionally fragile, who is trying to grapple with the loss of his father. One day he finds a key in an envelope in a vase in his father's old closet, and it becomes his personal mission to find out what that key opens. He begins an adventure all over New York City, looking for that key, looking for the lock that the key goes to. And in this adventure, he finds a lot of things about his father, and he learns important lessons about himself. In this passage, Oscar presents some of his inventions in a stream of consciousness narrative. Inventions are a hobby of Oscar's that helps him relieve some pain of his father's death. What about a tea kettle? What if its spout opened and closed when the steam came out, and it would become a mouth, and it could whistle pretty melodies, or do Shakespeare, or just crack up with me? I could invent a tea kettle that reads in Dad's voice so I can fall asleep. Or maybe a set of tea kettles that could sing the chorus to Yellow Submarine, which is a song by the Beatles, who I love because entomology is one of my raisons d'être, which is a French expression I know. What about microphones? What if everyone swallowed them and they played out the sound of our hearts through little speakers, which could be in the pouches of our overalls? When you skateboarded down the street at night, you could hear everyone's heartbeat, and they could hear yours. Kind of like a sonar. One weird thing is, I wonder if everyone's hearts would beat at the same time, like when women who live together have their menstrual periods at the same time, which is something I know about, but I don't really want to know about. And also, there are so many times when you need to make a quick escape. But humans don't have wings, or not yet anyway, so what about a birdseed shirt? Jonathan Safran Foer is really able to bring together themes of loss and pain, but also with humor and wit. Oscar embarks on an Odyssey-like adventure with only a key and New York City at his fingertips, which helps him learn about his father and himself. So the final book I'd like to present is a memoir. It's called The Color of Water, A Black Man's Tribute to His White Mother, and it's by James McBride. In this memoir, James McBride tells the story of growing up in the 60s as a black boy with a white mother. Poor but hardworking, James's mother Ruth makes ends meet to support her 12 children. James struggles with his own identity as he gets older, he realizes that he knows nothing about his mother's past until he forces her to tell him. Ruth tells her son why she has never brought up the past. I'm dead. You want to talk about my family, and here I've been dead for 50 years. See, my family, if you had been a part of them, you wouldn't have had time for this foolishness, your roots, so to speak. You'd be better off watching the Three Stooges than to interview them. Like to go interview my father? Forget it. He'd have a heart attack if he saw you. He's dead now. Or, if he's not, he's 150 years old. I was born an Orthodox Jew on April 1st, 1921. April Fool's Day in Poland. I don't remember the name of the town where I was born, but I do remember my Jewish name. Ruchel Dwar Zalska. My parents got rid of that name when we came to America and changed it to Rachel Deborah Shilsky, and I got rid of that name when I was 19. Rachel Shilsky is dead to me, as far as I'm concerned. She had to die in order for the rest of me to live. My family mourned me when I married your father. They said Kaddish and Sat Shiva. That's how Orthodox Jews mourn their dead. They say prayers, turn their mirrors down, sit on boxes for 7 days, and cover their heads. It's a real workout, which is maybe why I'm not a Jew now. There are too many rules to follow, too many forbiddens, too many you can'ts and you mustn'ts, but does anybody say they love you? Not in my family, we didn't. We didn't talk that way. We said things like, there's a box in there for the nails, or my father would say, be quiet while I sleep. My father's name was Fishel Shilsky, and he was an Orthodox rabbi. He escaped from the Russian army and snuck over the Polish border and married my mother in an arranged marriage. He was hard as a rock. My mother was named Hudis, and she was the exact opposite of him. Gentle and meek, she was born in 1896 in the town of Dobrzyń, Poland. But if you checked there today, nobody would remember her family because any Jews who didn't leave before Hitler got through with Poland were wiped out in the Holocaust. This is a truly touching story about generational and cultural differences between a man and his mother, and the story goes back and forth between James's life and his mother's life. So that's the end of my book talking presentation. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed it.